together to break the rivalry on the street and the turfism, and have them begin to work together to lower violence in the neighborhood. So we went out we would go out every Friday night, and we'd go where there was any kind of an incident or violence that had taken place. We'd go to that area to try to talk to young people on the street, as well as try to talk to neighbors in the neighborhood to get involved and engage in their block and their community. So this one particular night, we were out over in 79th and Marshfield, which is known more for Kilgore, Kilgore was the area there. We were talking to Juan and a few of the guys that live in that block, stay in that block, and Devon Cooper and a few others, and we were saying to them, hey, what if we brought everybody together to first meet each other over a basketball game at our place called the Arc, our gym building. That particular night, Isaiah Thomas, anybody know who Isaiah Thomas is? Bad boy, used to play with Detroit. No longer plays, but he's still very involved in community stuff around the country. And when our guys were saying, no, somebody's going to get shot, somebody's going to get killed, and we can't do that. Well, Isaiah Thomas said, I'm in. So we kept talking, and they said, well, we're in if you can get the other groups involved. So we started going over to Foster, which is, anybody know? Foster Park, what group is over there? Yeah, the Moses Stones over there, Foster Park. We went over to Loomis, where the primary Loomis to Racine, which is pretty much GD's, and then over to Morgan to 76 to 78th of Morgan, which is mostly BD's, but some vice lords also. When we started talking to other groups, they said, okay, how can we bring folks together for a game? And the game was the original hook, just it brings people together to get to play with each other. So we had, each gang ended up having their own team. At the same time, Joakim Noah had reached out to me and said, hey, I want to get involved in some way to help with the violence stuff going on in the city. I don't know anything about gangs. His father was a tennis player, and he'd been very removed from all of it. But Joakim is probably the most legitimate sports person I've ever met in my life. And I've met a lot of them. And we dealt a lot with this piece the next couple of years with Taj Gibson, really good. Jimmy Butler, Pargo, we got some Derek Rose, all the rest of it. Joakim's heart was just so pure. He would start coming down and talking to our guys. Everybody wanted to know we were going to have peace in there. Nobody would bring anything in, nobody would start anything. So we started with, he said, well, how do we make sure that nobody brings anything in the gym? And we really didn't want to get the police involved, and they didn't want to get involved. So I called up a friend of mine, Minister Farrakhan from the Nation of Islam. He sent us 35 NOI guys over who did wanting everybody at the door, and our men from the church all did the inside of the gym. We had the game September 22nd, 2012 for the first game, and we had 2,000 people in the gym, turned away probably 800 people on the outside, and had this great day. That was the beginning of it. We had about 12 NBA players down there, plus some of you who are basketball fans may know a guy by the name of Danny Crawford. He is the head of the NBA refs, and Jim Capers, who's another ref for the NBA, who's actually a guy who married him and his wife some years ago. They got involved, they ref the games. Lava Bulls came, so we had this great game. That was the beginning. The beginning was how do we bring guys together? And we continued that through the year and said, okay, now that we got contact with, we want to see how do we bridge the gap between the different groups here, and then also how do we make this thing get stronger so we really service to people. So since then we've had about 160 brothers who've gone through our GED program and about 130 full-time jobs. And we continued off the year with 2 12-week tournaments and a 6-week tournament that continued during the year. We had our second big peace game on September 21st, 2013. And this time we had about 20 NBA players or former NBA players that got involved. And same thing, filled the place up and turned people away. Never a problem, never an incident. And then we continue on Monday nights. We had this peace tournament. We're in our second peace tournament now. And how it's grown is we dropped violence amongst the gangs in that area 85% in 1 year in terms of shootings. As well as we moved the peace tournament from being a 4 teams who were really different organizations. So now we have 8 teams and we do a draft. So on any given team you may have BDs, GDs, moles, killer ward, vice lords, Terradome, you know, whoever might be on the team. So you have 4 or 5 different organizations on one team, all playing with each other. We have 3 NOI guys that want everybody coming in, want to pat down everybody coming into the gym. Every Monday night we do, like tonight we do a 5:30, 6:30, we do dinner, we have speakers come in, and we do everything working on expungement to job interviews, job preparation, health and blood pressure and stuff like that until there's a whole different things. At 5:30, 6:30, give everybody dinner. And then we do 4 games, 6:30, 7:30, 8:30, and 9:30 every Monday night, and continue to do with the job program and GED. And then any family issues, like somebody need a home, somebody need a housing, how we end up helping the brothers beyond that, so they realize we're there long term, we're there to care, not just to play basketball games. So that's been our real focus in the last year. And jobs. I mean, my biggest concern has been to try to, social service helps feed people, and the rest we feed 30,000 a year, 30,000 people. But the biggest concern is getting jobs, because 95% of the brothers in the street want 2 things: education and jobs. You can't just tell people, don't be violent, don't sell drugs, and you don't give anybody options of something else to do. So our point is, how do we give them options, and how do we build a relationship so that on the street, the guy who might have been a rival because you're from Foster Park and you're from Marshfield, but now you know each other, you play ball together, you know each other as baseball players or basketball players, and not simply as rivals on the street, which helps bring down the tension on the street. So that's been a big focus on the last year. Our youth building, we also run our youth building. We have a lot of activities, including somebody might have heard of Dondra's House. Have you heard of that? It's Kanye West's training of people in music. How many ever heard of Shay Rhymefest? Okay. Rhymefest did a thing a number of years ago. He actually got a Grammy with Kanye for a song. And he runs our music studio. Dondra's House finances it, which is Kanye West's group, and named after his mother. And then we do everything from dance groups to martial arts in our dojo room, which is our dance studio. And then we do computer training and the rest. And we have a job, like we have a job place as well as a social service place. So those are kind of the main focus of what we do. Obviously, now stop with this and after any questions you might have. My belief has always been, I was really influenced to go into ministry just a couple of blocks from here. In 1966, I was a junior in high school, and at a high school then was called Quigley, which is now St. Rita High School at 77th and Western. And while I was there, I heard about this guy, Martin Luther King, who was going to march through Marquette Park. So myself and a couple of friends of mine decided to ride our bikes over. We wanted to see if we knew if we asked our parents, they'd all say no. So we decided to ride our bikes over to Marquette Park and see what all this conversation was about this guy named King. Actually, we rode our bikes down 71st Street, passing the Ku Klux Klan place in 71st, over there between Tallman and Washtenaw. And then we went over to Marquette Park and saw 2 things that changed my life. One was I saw people marching who I knew, who lived in my neighborhood, went to my church, were parents of my classmates in school, and saw all this hate and saw this throwing rocks and throwing cans and throwing bottles, turning cars over, burning cars, and I saw this violence which I had never seen before from these folks and these people. Like I say, many who I saw went to my church. The second thing, though, was seeing Dr. King. Dr. King had already been hit by a rock, which I didn't know at that point until a couple of days later when I saw it on the news. But he he came to the park where much all this hatred and never ever responded to the hate, but in fact responded with saying we're brothers and sisters, we gotta live together. And it was like the greatest witness of nonviolence I'd ever seen in my life. And so I became obsessed with King, and I rode home that day on my bike saying I wanted to know about this guy. Either he was totally crazy or he had some kind of a strength about him I wanted to know about. And I created a wall in my room where everything I could ever find about him I put up, read every book he had ever written up to that point. And he became the reason I ended up going into ministry, because Dr. King used to always say, I'm not a civil rights leader, I'm not an activist, I'm a preacher of the gospel, and I believe the gospel has to be the thing that changes the world. I became, like I say, very close with his family after that. Spent a lot of time at his house down in Sunset Boulevard in Atlanta. And his witness, I think, of ministry became the blueprint for the kind of church or ministry I wanted to do. When I came to St. Sabina back in 1975, was when I first went there, 78th and Racine, and been there ever since, still there today. So let me stop and shut up and see any questions you might have that you want to ask, or that you, comments, questions, whatever.
Don't be shy.
So this program you have, is it like, is this for like the gang members you talking about?
It's open to anyone. Our key was to focus on the guys who were in different gangs, because, let me put it this way, I feel that a lot of brothers in the city who are connected with gangs, and and that whole thing is, you know much better than I. The way people are identified in gangs in this city and around this nation is ridiculous, it's asinine. And what happens is, you live on Marshfield, you're considered a kill ward. Now, you may not be active at the kill wards, but guess what? If you live there, somebody asks you, are you a kill ward, you're going to say yes, because you got to go back and forth to home. You don't have the luxury to get up and move wherever you want to move. You're in Foster Park, you're going to be identified as a moat. You live over on Morgan, in 77th, 78th, you're going to be identified as a BD, or a GD if you're over on Loomis. So a lot of people get identified as a gang, or will say they're part of a gang, just because they live in a particular place, a particular area of the neighborhood. But